Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, Alaska's pipeline to the future, delivering oil today, sustaining operations for tomorrow, committed to safety, operating the 800-mile Trans-Alaska Pipeline since 1977.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberly Hepner, and today is Thursday, April 10th, 2014, and in just a moment we're going to be talking about your forecast across the state, including the aviation, marine, and public forecasts. When we're not on air, feel free to visit us at arh.noaa.gov or simply type in weather.gov and navigate to the destination of your choice. If you'd like to get your information via the phone line, you can call us at 1-800-472-0391, and you can look us up on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Okay, now on to the satellite maps, and if we look out towards the west, we have a low pressure system that's just around the central part of the Aleutian chain. I'm going to put this into motion, and you can see the counterclockwise spin around the center of this low that's situated just to the east of Shemya. And putting that into motion one more time, watch how all this moisture is being streamed up through the central parts of the Bering and towards the western coast. But actually, I'm looking closer to home. Bear with me while my maps take just a moment. All right, looking closer to home, there's a large area of clearing with the clouds as low pressure is off to the southeast of the Gulf of Alaska. These are clear skies all across the state, and this view here will give you a nice view of that low spinning out in the Bering, and also a low pressure system that's kind of to the southeast here, just streaming up some clouds, making it to the Dixon entrance where they saw some showers earlier today. See, this low pressure is going to bring some more clouds through this evening. But mainly the mainland areas are staying clear through the afternoon. You can see a little bit of this offshore flow with these clouds just flowing right off into the southern part of the Gulf of Alaska. Now looking at the maps, the weather maps from earlier this afternoon, we have this low pressure system that's moved into the British Columbia area, and this is keeping kind of a stationary front in the area. So continually brings some light moisture on into the inner channels. On back towards the northern part of the Gulf, we're seeing clear skies, so no precipitation here. And all this white across the Gulf areas are snow along the mountaintops. Across the northern parts of the state, we did see some snow showers occurring along and heading towards the Beaufort Seacoast area. Clear across much of the western areas and even the eastern parts of the Bering. Looking out towards the west where the other low pressure system, this is a very large mature stacked low system with low pressure at 989 millibars of pressure. And we have a occluded front that's wrapped around, and mainly all the precipitation associated with this system is staying along the frontal boundary as rain across the eastern part of the Aleutian chain, and then a mix of snow and rain as you head north into the Bering, and then all snow across the northern and western parts of the Bering. Now, as we look at your forecast for tonight, not much movement is going to occur with this low pressure system. It's going to weaken some and keep the frontal boundary across the central parts of the Bering. And then on the low pressure coming from the North Pacific will bring another surge of warm air with it. So we'll see some rain beginning to increase across the eastern Aleutians as we head into the late hours tonight. Across the remainder of the state, mostly clear skies, except for the northeastern areas where they're going to see some light snow showers across the eastern Brooks Range and eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Across the southeast, we should see these light showers pushing on through the evening and then becoming lighter as we head towards your morning hours tomorrow. This boundary is going to stay in place, bring some scattered showers mainly to the Dixon entrance area as we head into your Friday morning forecast. So cloudy skies will clear later on the day on Friday as high pressure begins to dominate the Gulf of Alaska all the way up through the northern coastal areas, back through the northwest even. In the morning, you might see some fog developing across the southwestern coastal area in the Kuskokwim Delta area, perhaps, as we have this warm, moist air just sitting here to the south. We're going to see rain increasing across the Alaska Peninsula, and the sea level pressure is going to be increasing ahead of this low pressure system. So increased winds across the eastern parts of the Bering Alaska Peninsula and gusts up to 30 to 45 miles per hour through the channel terrain in these locations. Across the central part of the Bering, a mix of rain and snow as we get colder temperatures on the backside of this low pressure system. And then on Saturday, expect rain to continue and move up as a warm front pushes into the Kodiak Island area. Gusty winds also are going to pick up on the Saturday forecast for the western part of the Gulf of Alaska. A mixed rain and precip chance across the Bristol Bay area and heavier rain across the Alaska Peninsula. Now looking across the central parts of the Bering, we're going to see a mix of rain and snow, especially near the Pribilofs, and then as you go further north across the Bering, mainly snow here and lighter. And we have another low pressure system that'll develop just to the south of this system, but not a lot of precip associated with this, as the upper level system will be a little bit further north than that. Now looking at your temperatures for today, they had reached into the upper 30s to lower 40s across the southeast, warmest temperatures hitting near 43 degrees. And then back along the Gulf Coast, saw temperatures all the way up into the upper 30s, some reaching in the upper 40s as you headed just inland. As we look across the Alaska Range just north of here, the colder temperatures set in the mid-20s. And then as you make your way up towards the northern coast, temperatures climbed up to near zero. Barrow reported it was -1 this afternoon, and so was Barter Island. Had climbed up a little bit after 3 p.m. up to -1. Across the northwestern coast here, temperatures remain in the single digits with the colder air mass just coming in from the Arctic all the way down towards the southwest near the Kuskokwim Delta, where they saw temperatures into the lower 20s and then gradually increased across the Bristol Bay area into the lower 30s. Warmer across the Alaska Peninsula in the mid-40s. Still a little bit cooler to the north across the central Bering in the upper 30s. And then as you headed to the west, it was a little bit cooler out towards Shemya in the upper 30s. Looking at your temperatures for overnight tonight, not much change across the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, staying in the upper 20s to lower 30s. And then across the southwestern areas, expect temperatures dropping down into the single digits to possibly lower teens, and then across the Gulf waters in the lower 20s to lower 30s. Clear skies across much of the state will allow temperatures to get very cold again tonight. Not much different from yesterday, a persistence forecast with temperatures getting down to -20 degrees and lower. Across the southeast, again, temperatures will be in the mid-30s. However, with the skies beginning to clear out towards the the northern part of the Panhandle, might see some temperatures dropping into the upper 20s here. And then looking at your forecast highs tomorrow, a little bit warmer across the area with 40s overspreading the entire Panhandle, and then temperatures picking up into the mid-30s to upper 40s all along the Gulf areas. Slightly warmer across the entire state with 20 degrees and then lower towards the northern coast in the -8 degree range for Barrow, but we might see a little bit warmer temperatures. Barrow towards Kotzebue, we'll see temperatures increasing slightly, but not a whole lot just yet. in the single digits and then reaching into the upper 20s across the southwestern areas. Across the Alaska Peninsula in the lower 30s to mid 40s for you, all the way out through the western part of the Aleutians. Now looking at your aviation weather, IFR and MVFR conditions will be mainly located around the low pressure system that's in the Bering. We're going to see IFR conditions across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and also a chance to see IFR, MVFR as a weak low pressure moves off to the east across the Beaufort Seacoast, and the southeast mainly looking at MVFR conditions improving in the early afternoon hours. Now, a more in-depth look at your passes. Anaktuvik Pass will be MVFR clearing to VFR conditions in the afternoon. And then Adigan Pass will go MVFR to VFR. And Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will both be VFR. And Rainy Pass will be VFR. And Windy Pass will be VFR. VFR for Isabel and Tanita VFR as well. Lots of VFR, including Portage. And Chilkoot and White Pass will improve to VFR. They may start out MVFR, but they'll clear rather quickly. Now the freezing levels across the state, as you observe on our temperature maps, they're kind of hugging the coastline. So freezing levels are up towards the central Aleutians as you head towards the west, and the 2,000-foot freezing level is across the Bering, and then gets a little, progresses a little bit as you go to the south. So mainly 2,000 foot and higher. So the freezing levels are not improving just yet, even though we have these high pressure is in control. We're not warming up just yet. Now across the Alaska Peninsula, we do have the possibility for some light icing and moderate icing just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula. The jet stream is going to become more amplified as we head into tomorrow, with high pressure out across the Gulf of Alaska and low pressure over the eastern part of the Aleutians. Jet stream is going to be between 70 and 95, strongest just to the south of the Aleutian chain. It's going to help to push those low pressure systems, but they're going to get blocked up right here as it hits this ridge, and that's what's going to push them north up into the Bering. So for your 9,000 foot winds tomorrow, a lighter wind across the mainland between 10 and 25 knots, primarily out of the west, and then turning out of the northwest across the southeast around 15 to 25 knots. And then the low pressure system out here in the west, will see a change in direction around this low pressure with a westerly flow along the Aleutian chain, strongest winds as you approach the Alaska Peninsula. Looking at your 3,000 foot winds tomorrow, a very similar pattern with the strongest winds across the Alaska Peninsula around 40 to 50 knots. A lighter flow across much of the mainland between 10 and 15 knots out of the west and southwest, and a northwesterly flow across the southeast between 10 and 20 knots. Looking at your turbulent conditions for tomorrow, once again, focused around the low pressure system with light turbulence all across the Alaska Peninsula back towards the Pribilof Islands and including the eastern Aleutians, and may see moderate conditions across the Alaska Peninsula as well. All right, in just a moment, we're going to return with your marine forecast.
The Tax Day Lunar Eclipse.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky.
But we have bad sky news. We're going to be missing our fellow stargazer, Marlene Hidalgo.
That's right. For the past 2 years, Marlene has helped us show you the stars.
But she's hanging up her hoverboard and moving with her family to the northeast.
We wish her all the luck in the universe, and we'll miss her at Stargazers.
Keep looking up, Marlene.
Hey, Dean, when do you usually do your taxes?
Oh my gosh, my taxes, I haven't even done them yet.
Well, in case you keep forgetting, you'll have a celestial reminder this year. On tax day, April 15th, we'll have a total lunar eclipse.
That's right. Now, you're going to have to stay up really late for this eclipse.
Or get up really early.
Let's show you the tax day lunar eclipse and a few other things to look for on that really early morning.
Okay, We have our skies set for the night of Sunday, April 13th at about 9:30. We're facing east-southeast and can spot the almost full moon. Next to it is a bright star-like object. I say star-like because it's no star, but is in fact the red planet Mars.
Mars is over 57 million miles away from us and only looks like it's near the moon. The moon is about 240,000 miles away, about 237 times closer than Mars.
Lower toward the horizon, you'll find a bright blue-colored star that is actually a star. It's called Spica, and it's the brightest star in the constellation Virgo the Maiden.
The moon is thousands of miles away. The planets are millions of miles away, but that's nothing compared to the stars. Spica is about 1.5 quadrillion miles away.
Wow. Now, let's skip ahead one day and make it Monday, April 14th at 9:30 p.m. The moon is now full and has shifted over next to Spica. At this point, the sun, moon, and Earth are almost in perfect alignment. In a few short hours, the eclipse will begin. Lunar eclipses happen when the Earth is directly between the sun and moon. The Earth casts a shadow that goes out into space in a cone shape. When the moon orbits into the shadow cone, we have a lunar eclipse.
This can only happen at a full moon, but doesn't happen every full moon. The moon's orbit is tilted a little bit, so only during the rare occasions when everything lines up do we have an eclipse. Okay, let's get to the eclipse. Timing is important, and we'll be using Eastern Daylight Time here, so you'll have to adjust depending on your time zone. We need to set the sky in motion and move our time forward to 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m. on April 15th, and now 2 a.m.
At around 2 a.m. Eastern Time, you'll start to see the rounded shadow of the Earth encroach onto the lunar surface. After about an hour, the shadow will cover the entire moon.
We call this totality, and that should occur from 3:06 to 4:25 a.m. During totality, the moon won't completely disappear. Some sunlight bends through the Earth's atmosphere and still reaches the moon.
This light turns the moon an eerie shade of orange. To the ancients, this scared the heck out of them, and eclipses were looked upon with fear and dread.
Like doing taxes.
Exactly. What makes a lunar eclipse so cool is that you can never know what color it will be. Will it be pale gray, bright orange, or blood red?
Only the shadow knows. Each eclipse is different, but when you see that reddish shadow during totality, what you are really seeing is all the sunsets and sunrises of Earth projected onto the moon.
Cool. As for the tax day lunar eclipse, we'll be webcasting it on Ustream from when it starts at 2 a.m. to when it's over at about 5:30 a.m.
If you're clouded out where you live, you can watch all the action at Ustream. Check out www.stargazersonline.org for more information.
And if you haven't mailed in your taxes by the time the eclipse is over on April 15th, you'll have only a few short hours to do so.
Otherwise, this lunar eclipse may signal gloom and doom for you.
Or, at the very least, an audit.
Keep looking up.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm sure on television, if you're watching through tax day, we're going to hear a little bit about taxes somewhere on TV every day until the 15th. All right, now on to your marine forecast. And as I mentioned yesterday, ice had cleared out of the Cook Inlet area. We can see there's a little bit up there. If you look very carefully in the Knik Arm, we see some frozen surfaces there still, but otherwise, the rest of the Cook Inlet is clear. Also, as mentioned yesterday, the Bristol Bay area is clear of ice here. And then as you look towards the north, as we get to the Kuskokwim Delta and north, all ice covered from this and just north of the Pribilof Islands, still all covered in ice. All right, now looking at your marine forecast across the southeast. As we head into tomorrow, mainly a northerly flow and west as you go towards the outer waters and north towards Yakutat. And then the inner channels will be small craft here for tomorrow in the morning and then weakening 25 knots. And then seas are going to be 4 to 5 feet across the inner channels, and across the outer waters, seas are going to be between 6 and 9 feet. As we head into your Saturday, we're going to have lighter wind speeds here, mainly out of the north across the inner channels, and then a variable wind to the southeast parts of the Gulf of Alaska, and then out of the southeast at 10 knots as you head towards Yakutat. Inner channels will have seas around 2 feet, and the outer waters will be around 6 feet. Looking at the south central areas, we'll see variable winds across the Sound, and across the western Gulf and northern Gulf, we'll see 10 to 25 knots, increasing as you get closer to Kodiak Island. And then out of the north, across the inlet at 10 knots, stronger winds across the Barren Islands out of the southeast at 20 knots. And looking at your seas here, 2 feet across the inlet and the Prince William Sound area, and then across the western Gulf, 5 to 8 feet, with Shelikof Strait and the Barren Islands areas around 5 feet. Now, your Saturday forecast, wind speeds are going to pick up. Sees some gales across the western parts of the Gulf near the Barren Islands, as well gales, and across the Shelikof Strait. Otherwise, small craft advisories across the Gulf waters, 15 knots across Prince William Sound and 15 knots across the northern Cook Inlet, and small craft advisory across the southern inlet. Now, looking at seas between 5 to 12 feet as you head towards Kodiak Island, we'll have the highest seas, Shelikof and the Barren Island area around 10 feet, and then 3 to 7 feet across the inlet. Looking across the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay side, we'll see 35-knot winds between 7 and 9 foot seas, so gale criteria here, and gales just to the south of the Sandpoint area around 40 knots out of the east, and 30 knots as you head towards Kodiak Island. Seas across the Pacific side will be between 10 and 15 feet. Heading into your Saturday, lighter wind speeds, mainly small craft advisory, except just to the south of the peninsula where it's going to be 20 knots, and then mostly a southerly direction and east as you head towards the eastern part of the Alaska Peninsula. Seas between 6 and 7 feet on the Bering side, and then 11 feet across the Pacific side. Now, it gets a little bit messy across the Aleutian chain as we have directions mainly from the north, but as you head towards the eastern part of the Aleutians, you get more of an easterly flow, and the gale winds are going to be across the eastern parts of the Aleutians, with seas between 7 and 11 feet on the Bering side, and then along the Pacific side between 9 and 14 feet. Now, as we head into your Saturday, more of a general flow out of the southwest direction, small craft between 20 and 30 knots on your Saturday. And then looking at your west coast areas, an easterly flow offshore, and then near the central parts of the Bering, also 30 knots. And we'll see seas between 7 and 9 feet, small craft criteria here, brisk winds across the northern parts of the Bering. And then on Saturday, much of the same, small craft advisories across the central part of the Bering, 25 to 30 knots, seas 7 to 9 feet, and then an easterly flow across the mainland. And looking across your northwestern areas and the northern coast, we're looking at lighter wind speeds here between 10 and 15 knots out of the easterly direction along the Beaufort Sea coast. And then as you head towards Kotzebue Sound, winds will change out of the south direction, but still keep an easterly component across the Kotzebue area. Heading into your Saturday forecast, we're going to see a southerly flow mainly across the Beaufort coast and down towards Kotzebue. A little bit stronger winds out of the Chukchi Sea, out of the southwesterly direction. And then, of course, it's still going to be ice covered through the weekend. Now, just a recap on your forecast once again for tonight. Mainly, we'll see clear skies with some gusty winds through the Channel Terrain in the coastal areas. Low pressure will continue to move further into the British Columbia area. Showers will begin to taper off and become very light during the overnight hours. We'll see another warm front pushing up from the northern Pacific, bringing increased rain chances for the eastern part of the Aleutians tonight. However, the southwestern coast will stay dry with possible patchy fog developing just off the coast. Colder temperatures across the central part of the Bering bring a mix of rain and snow on into your Friday forecast as this next front makes its way north, brings some gusty winds across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern parts of the Bering. Expect winds here to be sustained between 25 and 35 knots with higher gusts, especially through Channel Terrain across the peninsula, around 45 miles per hour here. Across much of the state, we're going to have clear skies, high pressure in control all the way across, and even across the southeastern, all of the panhandle will see clearing skies on your Friday forecast. And then as we head into your Saturday forecast, we're going to see very much of the same. We're going to see clearing across the state, which for this time of the year is quite typical. We'll see a very dry pattern setting up with kind of warmer temperatures during the day, as long as we don't have too much cold air seeping down into, through the Brooks Range area here. So we'll warm up significantly into the 30s to lower 40s all across the southeast and the coastal locations. So I bet you're looking forward to those warmer temperatures at last, if you like the warmer temperatures. Now across the southwest, I have not so good news for you, because if you don't like the rain and snow, well, it's going to return on Saturday. But how far it pushes north is going to be the biggest question on Saturday. So look out for this system. As it heads up towards the Kenai Peninsula, they're going to see increased chances for rain. This system might try to push a little bit further to the east and maybe a little bit further to the north. So we'll be watching this system to see how much it progresses to the northeast. Across the eastern parts of the Bering, you're going to see a rain change over to a rain-snow mix, and then all snow on the north side of this low pressure system. Now across the western areas, we're going to see this low pressure system develop just to the south is the central Aleutian area, but only light scattered precipitation around this system, as it's just going to be developing. So they're finally going to see their clearing out of the precipitation for a couple of days as we head into the beginning of the weekend. Once again, just to recap everything, this low pressure system here is going to be the best chance for precipitation across the south central locations. We'll likely see it being held off into the Gulf of Alaska and possibly bring precip to the eastern parts of the Kenai and across the Prince William Sound, but it'll likely stay and continue to track across the southwest. So we'll keep an eye out for you this weekend. All right, I hope that helped with your weekend planning. I bet you're already getting an early start for the weekend with the clear skies out there. I'm meteorologist.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
You can tell a lot about a company by where it invests. At ConocoPhillips, we're investing in Arctic science and engineering at the University of Alaska Anchorage. And we're supporting today's students and tomorrow's engineers at UAF. In fact, today, more than 100 of our employees are University of Alaska graduates, and our future is in their hands. We happen to think that's a pretty good investment. ConocoPhillips, Alaska's oil and gas company.